Give it a few more minutes. I hope everyone on the line has been properly taking their immune boosting supplements and resting during this sort of challenging period. Tonight's class is going to be focused on meditation, but really it's such an important element for your overall immunity, and we'll talk about that as well. Just want to give you a little bit of context around that as we get started. Looks like we're at 8:02. I'm a Virgo, so I'm very time conscious. I want to make sure everyone gets enough adequate time to ask all their questions and participate in a timely way. So looks like we have Kiana on now. Welcome, Kiana. And Chastity, welcome. And Marcus, welcome. Deborah and Chandel, welcome. Okay. It's at 8:03 now, so we'll go ahead and get started with some introductory comments, and then folks can join us as they come in. I'll catch them up to make sure they don't miss anything important. But welcome, welcome, welcome to what is probably, I think, one of the most, if not the most important session for this webinar series, the 111 webinar series that I have done thus far. Meditation is such a critical tool, practice, lifestyle in terms of shifting your ability to be able to manifest and create, use the law of attraction, use tarot, use astrology, do any of the things that we've been discussing thus far. So today I wanted to tackle meditation in a way that made it accessible. I think that for many people, meditation is an idea as much as it is something they've had actually integrated into their life. So that's the framework in which we're working today. So a few introductory comments. My name is Dewan Price. I'm the founder and creator behind What Juan Knows. Many of you on the line will be familiar with What Juan Knows. It is a platform and a community sort of focused on as a creative outlet for me to both share thinking in this sort of metaphysical space and provide training around how to touch your own spirit through processes like meditation and tarot and astrology and numerology and crystals and other modalities that we have done webinars on thus far. But beyond that is a platform for poetry, for community. We'll be talking about some other events we have coming up that really tap into the community aspects of what I've been doing with this platform. So me, creator, writer, poet, dreamer, vibe curator, joy alchemist. And as I mentioned, I consider the platform to be a clarion call to help us live life with a little bit of flair, as Maya Angelou, my favorite poet, one of my favorite poets, and the Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez sort of trifecta of brilliant minds in poetry has stated, you know, it's not just about survival, particularly in this time, it's about thriving. So that's what I developed this platform to teach us to do. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, to sign up for our mailing list at whatjuanknows.com. And also look at the events upcoming, take a look at those to get a flavor for what we have going. In addition to that, I do intuitive reading as part of this work. And some of you I've read before, some of you will be, have set up appointments or let me know that you're setting up appointments. So, you know, take a look at that. They're all online right now, and some great opportunities to help you tap into that spirit piece, intuition, through a series of modalities I use in my intuitive reading practice. So please check that out as well under services in the shop section of the site. So with that said, let's talk about meditation. I'm super excited. So you all can unmute your lines to answer this question, or you can just drop something in the chat, whatever you have felt comfortable with, just to get a flavor for the room. When you think of meditation, what comes to mind? And also, if you have a current meditation practice and you want to talk about that, I'm curious who's doing meditation, who thinks they're doing meditation, who aspires to do meditation. What are your thoughts so far on meditation? What do you know about it? Where have you landed in your meditation practice so far? Anybody can just chime in.
Hi, this is Chandel.
Hi, Chandel.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I so appreciate it. When I think of meditation, what comes to my mind is just like peace and serenity. And I don't know all the different ways to do meditation, but one of the things that I try to do is just like take long, deep breaths to try to quiet my mind and come back to a peaceful state.
Mm-hmm. It's great input. That's great input. So a couple of the nuggets in there, she talked about her breathing. She talked about quieting her mind. And those two things are definitely going to come into play as we get a little bit further into the slide deck. Others? Anybody meditating?
Can you hear me? This is Chaz.
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
My connection is a little sketchy, but I'm going to give this a shot anyway.
We got you.
Thanks for hosting this session, by the way. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited.
My pleasure.
So I'm a Kemetic yoga teacher, and I do meditate regularly. I'm by no means an expert. I'm learning every day. What I have discovered is that I do different types of meditations for different purposes. And I'm not really beholden to any fixed routine, like I must be sitting a certain way, or I have to be laying down with my hands in a pyramid over my womb, or, you know, that kind of a thing. And also, just recently, I was reading a self-love book. And something I learned that was really intriguing to me was the author suggested that when you meditate, you might want to consider asking for a guide, like a spirit guide. And that's not really something I've ever consciously done. But for me, meditation and prayer have always kind of gone hand in hand.
Yeah.
So in a sense, I was doing that and didn't really realize it. But it actually, he was encouraging, you know, like you might want to do that consciously, like really ask for a guide for that practice, you know, in that moment, so that maybe you can have some, you know, revelations or insight into a particular situation, even if you're just seeking peace.
Absolutely.
To maybe consider that as well. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Thank you for sharing that. So she said of so much gold in everything she said. She dropped so many jewels in terms of connecting to spirit, connecting to consciousness, spirit guides or ancestors. And we'll touch on those things a little bit, but since this is a fundamentals course, what I wanted to do was make sure that we gave people opportunity to sort of start at a baseline. I find in terms of meditation, and she said, one of the things you'll find, and you'll know you're starting to get into your practice when you realize that you are always a beginner. I say that the first day of my practice is every day I start. So today was my first day of meditation. Every single day that I meditate and get on the mat or get in my high back chair or lay in the bed and do a meditation that way is my first day. And every meditation I do is my first meditation, because always turning into self, and that self is ever evolving. So a couple of things that you hit on there in terms of, you know, feeling novice or feeling new or feeling not expert. I'm not sure that ever goes away, because our beautiful minds are so fascinating, and they're ever growing, ever expanding, ever evolving way of being in this world. And how we relate to that on the meditation mat is also going to change from minute to minute, day to day. And I've found that in my practice as well. So with that said, I brought up a couple of images in terms of meditation, at least the way my crazy Gemini moon, with all these retrogrades, my crazy Gemini moon mind thinks about meditation. So we've got Patrick Star from SpongeBob. He's doing his sort of the classic hand pose in the lotus position on the floor with his insets, meditating under the water. Not sure how that works. And then we've got DJ Khaled doing some deep breaths, it looks like, also in lotus. And the little Zen monk, he's so cute, he's falling asleep in the traditional sort of probably Tibetan looks like from the image practices. Oops, let me go back. And then, of course, I have an obsession with French bulldogs, and they kind of naturally meditate. Mostly they're just lazy. So my little Frenchies up there meditating as well. And I just thought that was cute, so I included it. But when I think of meditation, I tend to think of something like this. And so when I bought my first meditation pillow, maybe 7 years ago, shortly before my life blew up, that's the way these sort of spiritual dark night of the soul's paths go occasionally. I thought that I had to, meditate in this way. So I think the point you were making around, having to sit in a certain way or be a certain way, that was my original thinking. I was going to sit on this pillow and try to figure this out. But through some spiritual practice and coaching, I've learned a lot more since then, and it's ever, ever evolving. And so my practice now, a full disclosure, like I mentioned, is still evolving. I want to be one of those people that tells you that I meditate every day, but there are days that I do not meditate, at least in the most purposeful way that I should be meditating. And I say should because I know that it's one of those things like eating healthy, exercising, and drinking my 8 ounces of water a day that makes me a better human, helps me perform, helps me concentrate, and really keeps my mindset in a way that's connected to that spiritual center and source. And when I'm not in practice and I'm not consistent, it shows up in my ability to maintain my emotions, my anxiety, or anxiety. I don't want to claim anything around anxiety as mine. Fearful thoughts, rapid thinking. And to that point, just being distracted. I love this GIF. And I wanted to use this one because, I'm a big social media person, as you all likely know. And, just that sort of antsiness on the meditation pillow to get to your phone and be able to make sure that you don't miss a message or just other silliness and notifications. But I'm starting to realize that giving myself those 30 minutes in the beginning of the day, and yes, 30 minutes for me, where yours may be 15 or maybe 2 hours, everybody's path is going to be different, right? But when I do my 30 minutes, because it takes me a good 7 to 8 to even get on the mat and figure out, okay, disconnecting my thoughts from, this is Dewan thinking about meditating, I am meditating, to being in meditation. And we'll talk about what that looks like, because there's some nuance there around connecting from the self versus the self that thinks. And mindset and maintenance of the mind on the meditation mat is probably the most challenging thing that we all deal with. So please ask questions. I wanted to include this definition because I think it's probably the best ones I've seen. It's by one of my favorite buddies in the spiritual world, Deepak Chopra, and he says, meditation is a progressive quieting of the mind until you get to the source of the mind, which is pure consciousness. And really, when we're on the meditation mat, what we're seeking is that consciousness. I think what that looks like has been the gap, at least in my practice, because it's like, well, what are we waiting on, right? Is there a bright white light? Does something come shining down? Is there something in the back of my mind that's going to tell me, hey, you're there, you're in pure consciousness right now? And the more I've done it, honestly, it looks different at different times. And the way that I'm conducting my meditation impacts how that shows up as well. And we'll talk about that. And I'd love to hear your anecdotes and thinking around this piece too, because it really gets into some really mind-bending, contemplative sort of philosophies around the way we relate to our own consciousness, the way our thoughts show up, the way we hear the voices inside our head, and really the difference between who you are as, say, Adrienne Johnson or Kiana Hughes versus who is the person thinking about that in that moment. And that's where it gets a little bit matrixy and kooky, but bear with me because we're going to talk about it all. So here's a few other quotes that I just like in this space that sort of wraps around these kind of complicated questions around consciousness. It helps break it down even a little bit better. So Eckhart Tolle, another one of my favorite spiritual philosophers, you just, master meditator, master sort of spiritual thinker said, to realize that you are not your thoughts is when you begin to awaken spiritually. And that disconnecting from thought is what the meditation mat, in a lot of ways, is about. It's about getting you out of your head and easing into the being of your own spirit, of your own energy field in this world. I didn't realize how much I'm in my own head until I started meditating. And I wasn't even aware of that voice in my head until I started meditating. And then I read, which you can drop in the chat if you read it as well, The Untethered Soul, which I think helped me understand a lot about that voice in our head. And we'll talk about that book as well. I've got a video clip in here from the author to explain a bit about that. It looks like we have some comments in there. Yes, learning and getting out of our head. So absolutely, learning to get out of our own heads, our own thoughts. Meditation is key to that. This next quote touches on that as well. The most vital thing in spiritual life is being able to watch your mind, to be the observer of your mind so that your mind is not controlling you. And truly that ability to fall out of an anxiety-filled moment, or catch yourself when you're being jealous or petty or about to lose your temper, or to say this is a thought, or just not necessarily reality, this is my thinking about the way the reality is showing up right now, and to catch yourself before 5 minutes down the road you're filled with regret about something you did, said, or otherwise impacted around another person. To be able to sit in compassion and kindness in new ways. Meditation is going to give you all of that and more. And on some days you're going to be, A+ at it, and some days not so much. But it's called a practice for a reason, right? Because you gotta practice that. And we're going to go into detail around how you can approach it in an accessible way that doesn't feel overwhelming or esoteric, or overwhelming from a spiritual standpoint, or something to be fearful about. So another quote here: we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And again, I turn back to that idea of touching your own spirit through your meditation mat. I think once you've gotten into a practice, of done so consistently, you will start to see the way the meditation practice will spill out into other aspects of your life, in terms of balance, in terms of tuning up your intuition, in terms of, I think was mentioned, being able to tap into spirit guides and ancestors and other energetic fields of consciousness around you, because again, you're being able to relate back and forth with yourself outside of yourself. It's a mind bend. So this is another quote, and I was a little bit skeptical whether I wanted to include this, but I think it's important, and it's by Michael Singer, as I mentioned, the author of The Untethered Soul, which is like a game changer in terms of thinking about what true meditation is. But the important part about this quote, and I'll let you just read to yourselves, but it's the part I have bolded. So for the deepest meditation, he says, you must not only have the ability to focus your consciousness completely on an object, so that object may be your breath, or the white noise from your air purifier, or you may be doing a meditation in which you let your thoughts just float in and float out, free-wielding. There's so many different approaches to meditation, and we'll touch on some of those. But he says you must also have the ability to make awareness itself be that object. It's again the idea of you are not your thoughts, but you are the thinker of the thought. And the sort of separation there of what that looks like, and not being defined by your thinking, crazy reptilian, as they call it in the spiritual community, mind. Because that mind is the one that has the anxiety. That mind is worried about what they saw in the news or the president said. That mind is thinking right now about getting the meatloaf out of the refrigerator, and is not, sitting in this mindful moment observing necessarily everything I'm saying, but it's not purposeful. We don't do it maliciously. It's just sort of the discipline of the mind and how we're focused in our everyday being in this world. It's just one of those human things. In the highest state, the focus of consciousness is turned back into the self. And that's sort of when you have those spiritual breakthroughs, those aha moments on the yoga mat, for instance, or on the meditation mat, or you can have it, any number of different ways in life. But I think consistent meditation practice allows you to do that and be more conscious of, your spirit self. Moving on. So this is what tends to happen when I meditate. And I just wanted to give y'all an idea, because this is literally every thought that came to me in the middle of my meditation this morning. I said I should make a slide about this. So if this is relatable to you, just raise a hand in the chat or drop something in the chat, because literally this is the way my mind works. And so I don't even know. I did 30 minutes this morning in the meditation chair. I sat down and I got my mind right. I said, I'm just doing a simple meditation. I'm going to count breaths. I'm going to listen to my air purifier and just, breathe in, breathe out, back straight. I'm grounded, rooted, centered. And then all of a sudden my mind just did the thing. So I was thinking about Erykah Badu. Then all of a sudden I was thinking about this show I'm watching on television called Belgravia, and wondering not if that was really the baby daddy in the TV show. And then all of a sudden my mind went to wanting some pho noodle soup and booking a trip to Turks and Caicos. So clearly I have to go to Turks and Caicos immediately. And then going to work and worried about what I got to do to get on this WebEx. Am I going to make it? Because I set it for 15 minutes. Am I going to have enough time to get off of the meditation pillow, to get to the laptop, to let it turn on by 9 o'clock so I don't miss the meeting? And then for some reason, a show I used to watch as a child called 9 to 5 just popped in my head out of nowhere. I haven't thought about that show in over probably 30 years. So I used to watch it when I was 5 years old. So it was just what in the world is going on? And some days on the meditation pillow look just like this. This is not failure, guys. This is called being a person, being a human, and being a thinking, feeling entity. The thing is, with practice, you eventually will learn to let these things come, go, and just float away, and not put any judgment on them. And that is the best way that I can kind of describe how you give yourself grace in the space of your meditation. Some of the comments in here, my mom said her mind's never at rest. I know, Mommy, my sweet Libra, your mind is never at rest. But through a meditation practice, I can help you get closer to what that can look like on a consistent basis, particularly around the ideas of anxiety, because I think that is key here. So moving on. I think this is the funniest slide to me, because this is literally what my brain did this morning. I'm like, girl, you were all over the map. All right. So this is a fun slide that I want to include too, because I want to help get us to the idea of what meditating is versus not meditating. And this is a simple slide, I think, that shows it. It's a little bit of a misnomer because she's got the third eye open and her body's all radiating light. You may or may not get your third eye open and radiate light, just depending on how you flex in that day. What I liked about this was that it's the idea of getting away from the I am versus the idea of just not having anything in your mind, being clear. That's how you know you're in a meditative state. Some things that have happened to me when I'm in a meditative state is that I've received sort of feedback from different consciousness. I've heard voices. I've picked up on other things. I've had things come out of my mouth and I began speaking from a different realm, consciousness. I'm not sure how to describe it. Did it scare me a little bit? Yes. Am I still here to talk about it? Yes. Did I know that I really meditated that day? Yes. So, even when you're doing things like creative visualization, where you're journaling and meditating through a written practice, and some will argue that's not meditation because you're doing something. I have sort of mixed thinking around that, but you can tap into other consciousnesses. You can tap into just that mindless, empty, blank space once you've sort of tuned out and gotten into that meditative state. I think they mentioned, again, the spirit guides, it's the same sort of thinking. Being able to, once you get out of the monkey reptilian mind of all those different thoughts and just, allow it to melt away, that's how you know you are in your meditative state. You know it when it happens, and it does not happen every day for everybody, but it can with practice more consistently than not. So again, have you ever noticed a voice in the back of your mind that won't shut up? I mean, mine goes a mile a minute, especially the Gemini twins. And looking in the chat, Kiana says, yes, being centered and in complete meditative state, absolutely. So you all are hearing the voice in your head that's like, yammer, 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 yammer. He don't like you. She likes you. Ooh, she thinks she's cute. I don't really know why she posted that on Instagram. She probably shouldn't have. I'm tired of seeing it. Da, 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 da. I mean, this voice just says the most ridiculous things. Shouldn't wear that. You need to put a bra on. Just all sorts of foolishness. And you're like, would you just shut up and let me do my Excel spreadsheet? But the voice just goes. Your meditative practice helps you try to, evict the voice. Exactly. Your meditative practice can help you do that. But it's like, I think one of the things I want to know is, what is this voice? And through Michael Singer, I was able to get an explanation for that. So I'm going to try to play this video, and hopefully you can all hear this on the chat. Let me know and make sure the audio is working. I'm going to play it.
What is the voice inside our head?
Well, it's something we listen to on a regular basis. The problem is we think it's us. So for example, you look at a vase and it says, God, look, that's a very interesting shape, but I don't really like the color that much. It reminds me of my grandmother's vase. And all of a sudden we have somebody narrating and talking inside her head. That's not you.
Yeah.
Right?
Those are all your thoughts about the vase.
And more as I watch that, I realize it never shuts up. That it talks about everything. It judges everything. It thinks about everything.
Right. In the early 70s, Michael Singer was a young economics student studying for his doctorate. Sitting with a friend one day, he noticed a lull in their conversation. In that quiet little lull moment, he became aware of the thoughts that were running through his head. He realized that voice, that incessant voice that expresses worries and doubts and anxieties, was not really him, but he was the observer of the voice. That inner dialogue was an expression of his psyche, not soul. And that was the beginning of his awakening.
And that was my path. That was the beginning of my path.
So what happened actually in that moment now that you can describe? I know Eckhart Tolle has said that that is the awareness, the voice, the awareness of the thoughts, or the awareness of the voice inside your head is where consciousness resides. And that is who we really are.
Yes.
So that's what you came to.
Yes.
That was your open door.
Yes.
To the path to understanding yourself as a spiritual being inside a physical human body.
With a mind.
And isn't this the most important thing ever?
Period.
To get the
Period.
Bar none.
None. It's the
This is
most
the road
important
to the
thing.
spiritual
Yes.
path, is to understand that you are a spiritual being. And the way to understand that you are a spiritual being is to know that you are not all of those thoughts.
That's the key, right? Because so far we can't say what you are, because that's a thought, right?
Right, that's a thought.
Just, you're not the thought. Why? Because I'm watching it.
Yes.
You are there watching these thoughts. And sometimes people say to me, but which of those are me? None of them are you. You are the one who's watching.
Okay, so I got this. I've shared this, so if you all have heard it before. When I was in India, I got it really clearly. I mean, I'd understood it through Eckhart. I'd understood it through transcendental meditation. I really got it. I was in India earlier this year. And there was a yogi who was leading me in meditation. And it was just the two of us. And he had me, he said, close your eyes. And now I'm going to name different objects. And one was a red triangle, and one was the moon, and one was whatever, all these objects. And he said, hold on to the object in your mind, and then when I name the next object, let it go. What I realized in that conscious moment was that that's what's happening all the time. Red triangles and picket fences and chairs and thoughts about everything are coming in, and you can let those thoughts, I'm not good enough, I lost my job, I can't believe he left me, I can't believe my kids did it.
They're thoughts.
They're thoughts.
They're not you.
They're not you. So how do we begin to separate ourselves from the thoughts? That's the question.
Right, and that's the key. What I love that you said is that really is spirituality.
And
Because to separate what you're not from what you are, if you don't do that,
right,
you're going to stay lost. The self is spiritual. The one who's watching is the gateway to spirituality. So if you continue to just get involved in the mind, in the thoughts of the mind, this that doesn't take place.
I thought that was so important to show you all, because I think that Michael, Seeley, and Oprah do such a great job of explaining a very kind of esoteric and hard to grasp concept. But again, it's about being the observer of your thoughts. It's a very matrix type thing. You're a slave. You are like everyone else. You were born into bondage, into a prison you cannot see, taste, or feel. I think it's feel. a prison of your mind, or touch rather, a prison of your mind. And that's a quote from one of my favorite movies of all time, Matrix, because it really is a Matrix moment when you learn to break away from the construct, essentially, of the way that you see yourself, which is, you know, your ego, in traditional sort of spiritual terms, and be able to understand that you are the person in the back of those thoughts. I mean, it allows you to give yourself some grace in a lot of ways too. Now, I'm going to pause here to see if anyone has any questions around that, because I know the idea is a little bit complex, but as you start to incorporate that in the back of your meditation practice, it will become clearer and clearer. So any thoughts or questions around that specific idea so far? Everyone's quiet. I just want to make sure everyone's still tracking. Just drop a quick, I'm still here. I've got it in the chat so I can know that we're all in one accord. And if you have a question, please do ask. Got it. Still here. Got it. Studying the slide. Perfect. Here. Perfect. Okay, folks are tracking. Yeah, this is tough stuff, and this is several resources available to you all at the end of this to support you, including some books that are must reads in this space. Even when I think I have this idea, I lose it. So give yourself a little bit grace in this moment too, to know that this is tough stuff, but it really will change and shift your life in ways that are immeasurable. And then moving on. So once you start meditating, one of the things I think is a little bit scary is my mind going to explode? So one of my biggest fears when I bought my meditation pillow was, and I bought a book on like Buddhism and some other stuff. Am I going to end up like, you know, a bald-headed Black woman in the mountains of, you know, Asia somewhere with my head shaved in a orange, like toga type of outfit? Is going to completely shift my life. Like, I like Gucci, I like parties, I like, you know, drinking, having a good time with my friends, carrying on, will spiritually totally shift my life. And the answer is, at some point it could. And so when I was thinking this thought, that's one of my fears is like, I'm going to end up, you know, like a monk or something. I don't think that's my path, but I'm open to separating myself from myself enough to know that anything and everything is possible. So I started thinking like, I wonder if there are any Black women monks, right? That's the thought that sort of took me beyond my fear to sort of formulate something that might be useful from this. And as these synchronicities always work, I came across someone that is now going to be a important part of my knowledge gathering, Dr. Panna Vanati, I knew I was going to practice pronouncing that one, is a former Christian pastor and a co-founder of a spiritual community sort of focused in traditional Buddhist backgrounds. But I found some videos that I thought was useful where she talked about sort of her transition and her relationship with meditation in a way that was very accessible. So, you know, she's on her path, one mind, but I was like, oh, this is fantastic. So look, there is someone out here that's doing it. I'm probably not going to be my path again, but totally interesting sort of evolution she had. Her story is really cool as well. If you Google her name, she has some great resources for meditation on YouTube, but I wanted to share this one with you all because I thought it was particularly useful for what we're trying to do. And this is going to give us a nice bridge into understanding how to meditate effectively.
Coming up in my early days, I was very much a fighter. You know, in spiritual circles, we like to talk about being a spiritual warrior, but I was a straight out street fighter. That's really it. And I really wanted to change that behavior. And although I was a great spiritual practitioner, devotion was my whole life. I was a walking, talking Bible. I just basically memorized it and I understood it, but I still had not been able to master my own emotions. And that's where meditation helped me. When I got to the place that I no longer had to be afraid of myself, that I would act in some sort of way that I would come to regret 5 minutes later, then I knew I was on the right path. And that's what meditation has done for me. It has allowed me to take my, what was my warring attitude and fighting the world, fighting what's out there. And I am able to go inside and I see my own fear, or I see my own insecurity, I see my own ignorance, or I see my own hatred, I see my own lust, I see my own greed, I see, and I am able to neutralize it inside. And when that happens, then what I see outside changes, it's different. And this is how meditation has made such an impact, you know, in my life. For once, I'm not telling you what you should do, but I'm looking at what I need to do to have different eyes through which to see. It is powerful. The Buddha Dharma, it's powerful. That's all I can say, you know, and just getting to that place, you know, in the beginning, you know, we need to rely. I mean, even when we, you know, take refuge in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, there's this notion of a reliance, but it's not a forever reliance. It's a reliance in the beginning to give you some confidence that something is propping you up. But as you go through the process, then you learn to be a lamp unto your own feet and a light into your own path. And you learn that everything that you need is resident, is available within. I think that when I was first introduced to meditation, I had such a difficult time with it. I mean, I was told to just sit there for half an hour and let whatever happen, happen. And mostly I was bored. And I was like, well, I don't think this is going to be for me, you know. But then I found over the 30 days that something opened up inside. There was an inner light that really shone. And I'm talking about a truly a luminous light. It was a light, not a play on words. It was an inner light. And that's when I realized that this was the doorway to something more than what we than the words that we ascribe to it. And that's why the Buddha says it has to be directly apprehended. And that was my first exposure. For me now, at this point in my life, meditation is more like a state that you are in based on the preparatory work you've done. And so when the Buddha talks about meditating when you're walking, when you're standing, when you're lying down, and when you're sitting, he's basically talking about 24/7 being in a certain state all the time. And so we're doing some external preliminary practices, but the object is not just to do those practices, but what that practice yields, which is getting into a certain mental state that allows you to be perched sort of like at a pinnacle where you can look out and you can survey the land and you can understand exactly what is occurring at this moment and what should be my contribution to making the present moment better. And so my meditation practice now is very different than when I started. I did a lot of meditating, a lot of sitting. But now to have 5 minutes here, to have 1 minute there, it's like an hour. To have to take an hour is like 5 minutes. It's all the same, and it's interchangeable for me. So I think some Zen master said we should be able to sit in the middle of a freeway and meditate, and that is so true, because once you know, it's like taking a trip to the store. After you've done it times, you know how to get there, and you can just instantly get there and be in that space.
Thank you. I wanted to share that with you all. I thought you did such a fantastic job, sort of outline, even from the perspective of somebody that went very far in their spiritual seeking and practice to live a life as a full-time Buddhist monk. So, and she even said when she first got on her mat, bored, distracted, confused, isn't for me. So all of us have those feelings, and having some, again, grace for yourself on the mat is key. I'm sharing a quote here. You do not need to leave your room, remain sitting at your table and listen. Do not even listen, simply wait, be quiet, still and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. We're rolling in ecstasy at your feet. And I think that sort of sums up, in a nice way what she's describing in terms of the serendipities, the alignment, the ways in which your role in the world shows up when you're doing your meditation, answers to questions that may have been in the back of your mind start to come in with no real effort, of course. You'll find solutions showing up. You'll find, as I mentioned, answers, and there's certain kind of peace. I even have that when my meditation is consistent. My practice is what's supposed to be, that peace, that non-reactivity, that greater compassion for myself and others, showing up in small and big ways. So those are some of the benefits there. Moving on. So how do I practice meditation from sort of a 101 sort of standpoint? And as we mentioned before, this can look very different for any number of us on the line, and you may have your own individual ways of approaching it. There will be people that do guided meditations. There will be some of us that use apps. There will be some of us that will simply sit in the chair and just be. So there is no, I won't say there is no wrong way, but there are certain fundamentals towards approaching meditation. So I wanted to give you those, sort of get you into the flavor of what your practice could look like. So sitting in silence and being, that's sort of the foundational, starting point for your meditation. So TV's off, radio's off, no social media, unless you're using a guided meditation sort of app. You might still have your phone on, but you can put it in sleep mode so you're not getting notifications. No writing or reading. Some people would do meditative writing, which I think is a sort of separate thing from that. In reading, you're typically having a conversation with the author, so that's not really being in silence because your mental mind is engaging with the author and feeding back into the relationship there. So typically reading isn't something you want to be doing in meditation. You're focusing your concentration on a single point. So for me, it's the white noise of my air purifier or my air conditioner, or it's my breaths. I'm counting breaths in and out. Not necessarily changing how I breathe, because I think the natural reaction is to do deep, deep breaths or, inhale in a way that you can really hear it, but just counting your breaths in and out as they exist. Or some of us will put our hands on our chest so you can feel it, the air coming into the lungs. Others will not. Again, it depends on what works for you. There are also certain mudras you can do, or hand positions, when you get into more of the Buddhist type practices, and those will align up with your chakra systems if you're thinking of the sort of Kundalini type practices. But again, that's a bit more advanced. I offer some resources at the end of this for those that may be more advanced in their practice. I'm looking for resources there where you can use, again, some of these tactics in your meditative practice, because it's going to take you to a different level of meditation, simply because the way the energy moves in and out of the body. For those Reiki, my DC accent coming out, Reiki folks will be very familiar with this as well. Observing your wandering thoughts and the inner dialogue, your mind with mindfulness is important. You can let your thoughts just drift away without judgment or deep consideration, because the thoughts are going to come. And getting past the idea that you failed your meditation or you didn't do good because you thought about the orchid dying on your windowsill, or the Excel spreadsheets you have to complete by tomorrow at noon, or the, fish that's defrosting on the counter. Any of those things are not representative of any failure on your part. So again, grace on the mat, being still, and letting the thoughts come in and passing without judgment. Eventually, when you sit there, your mind is going to give up and you'll be in stillness and simply will be. This is when you're in the state of sort of pure potentiality. Deepak Chopra talks about that as well. I'll give you a book by him at the end of this as well to think about. This is where, again, the universe is rolling out at your feet and you're sort of touching your own spirit, connected to your consciousness in a way that'll be effective with your practice going in really for the rest of your life. In this moment, you'll notice that your desire to control and judge things starts to move away. You'll have more compassion. And over time, you'll learn to let things go. You'll be less reactive. Things will come in and you can let the thought come in, realize that's not really you. And knowing where source comes from is key here. And I think someone mentioned at the beginning of this how tightly their practice of meditation is to their prayer practice. And for me, it's one, they are sisters from another mister. My prayer and my meditation are two of the practices that I use daily when I'm at my best self, to be able to fortify my spirit and fortify my energy field before going out and engaging in the world. That's when the synchronicities happen. That's when I'm able to manifest and intentionally create in my life. That's where I'm able to come up with creative ideas in my poetry and be able to touch and, you know, develop content out of nowhere for stuff I didn't even know I knew how to do. That's when I'm able to get into flow with my work and let things just sort of fall into place and surrender to life instead of stressing and letting that monkey mind go, chatter, 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 and just letting the solution show up and easing into the flow of life. One of the things I always tell, the anecdote stories I always tell is how I was in a very, very stressful position in my job, and to the point where I was breaking out in hives, just throwing up, just, you know, just ridiculous levels of stress, really toxic. Because I was in, you know, that monkey mind about it. I used to go home and worry about it. I was like 24/7 worried about it. And at one point, I just decided I was not going to do it no more. I just was not going to do it. And so I was going to resign. I had no other job lined up. And I was going to take myself to Turks and Caicos to meditate on the beach. And so that's precisely what I did. I submitted that resignation letter. You know, the way the universe works is so funny though, because I didn't have a real plan. And I'm telling you, I had no plan. I was just going to make it work. So set the letter in at about 8:55 that I was resigning. At 9:15, I had booked the flight and the hotel in Turks. And that weekend, my CEO had kind of emailed me and said, you know, we can't afford to lose you. What do we have to do to be able to keep you? I understand that you're going through a lot. You know, what can we do to keep you in the position? And my thing was, you know, this is what it needs to look like. And I was able to shape my position, shape my connection with that company. And I'm still there to this day. And also I had a very nice time meditating on the beach in Turks and Caicos. So I say that to say that fortification of your faith and that fortification of your ability to know what's for you will come as you can quiet the mind and get back to touching your spirit through meditation and prayer practice. And things like that and anecdotes like that will show up in your life in ways that are beyond explanation. Grace will come in, favor will come in. You'll get those goosebumps. You'll see the synchronistic numbers, and you'll be able to sort of rely on these things as challenging events roll up, like what we're dealing with right now. So again, it's about surrendering to the flow of life. Thanks for indulging me with that. I really wanted to just give you a real world anecdote of the way these things play out in my life, at least. So why should you meditate? I gave you all these amazing reasons, but developing intimacy with the self beyond ego. I love my titles. I love the fact that I'm an AKA. I love that I have my MBA. I love, what else? That I'm a DC native. Happy DC Natives Day to anyone that's DC native on the line. But at the end of the day, those aren't really me. They are labels. They are certainly parts of my personality. But the true self is beyond all that. So what I'm doing now, my practice is really tying and tuning back into who not even Dewan is, because that's a label too, mommy. I love my unique name, by the way. The you know, the person behind the thought, figuring out who she is, and from a spirit level, what her contributions in this iteration of life looks like. That has been my work. Slowing down to touch my own spirit. I keep saying that line. I love it. It's from the movie Daughters of the Dust. It's we're going to do an event around Daughters of the Dust, and I'll talk to you about that in a bit. But understanding your true nature, shadow and light, the addictive parts of you, the shadow aspects of you. So much of spirituality gets wrapped up in the sort of light pieces and, you know, peace and blessings and incense and candles and crystals and pretty things. But the real work comes from when you're in your dark night of the soul and shit hits the fan and you're not sure that you want to keep going. And then grace comes in and sweeps you up and connects you to, you know, this extra reserve energy and power and sustainability, and allows you to keep going and push forward to brighter days. And many of us may be feeling those very things right now in this COVID moment. So absolutely moving out of your fear-based thoughts, moving out of that anxiety, and, you know, tapping into mindfulness. Mindfulness and meditation are not the same thing. You can obtain mindfulness through a meditative practice, but mindfulness is something that you want to incorporate into many aspects of your life beyond just the meditation mat. So perhaps we'll do a session on mindfulness. I think it's equally important to think about how we're being mindful across the board. Creating that silence in your mind again, and giving precedence to things that are going on in reality versus what's going on in your head. Like, my mind makes up scenarios, for better or worse, that literally never will happen in my head. Like, I'm dating 2 Chainz. That's not happening. He's married. He does not want me. But at the end of the day, like, your mind can do all this cool imaginary, imagination-based things and create all these things. It's using those powers for good, to create art, to create solutions in a world that needs it, versus using it to create a future through, thoughts create things, as we talked about in our Law of Attraction workshop, that doesn't serve you. Abraham Hicks is another good resource for you. They are a sort of collective channel, for lack of a better way to express that, but they also use meditation as a way to really directly connect you with Law of Attraction, so I would highly recommend that. Didn't include it in the slides, but wanted to throw that in there because I think that for many of you, you want to know how all these tools work together, and they do in that case. So other benefits, and these are key right now when we're all thinking about our health. Lowering blood pressure, improving the immune system. Ding, 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 ding. We should all be meditating right now. Yes, I love Abraham. Someone put in the chat that they love Abraham Hicks, the business. By the way, they have new videos for this COVID moment. So if you haven't seen those, like 60 up on the YouTube right now. So take a look at those. Improving the immune system, as I mentioned, improving blood circulation, also good for immunity, lowering heart rate, again, less anxiety, slowing your respiratory rate, which is so important in this moment. And this whole, I don't try to speak it, it's like Voldemort for me, but the COVID moment right now is about the lungs, disease of the breathing and the lungs, and tuning into your breath through yoga, through meditation right now is so important consistently for that very reason. It's a disease centered around the lungs, and we're in this Gemini moment coming up, and Gemini is really a sign that's focused in the lungs. So I really think this thing is going to be out of here, like in my best guess, into June, or at least reduce in some way, because we'll be out of Gemini season and we can move on. But, again, thinking about how we're connecting our breath in our everyday life, and taking supplements like cumin and turmeric and ginger and golden milk, which combines all 3, which I do daily. It's so decadent. The cinnamon and a little manuka honey, ooh, it will change your life. But doing those things as a practice every day beyond COVID, just to help you sleep better. There's so many of my clients that suffer from insomnia, and most of this is tied to those racing thoughts and racing mind, and they can't shut the mind off. Having a practice of meditation and having that overall wellness pieces tied up in the way you're taking care of yourself will improve things across the board. Your attention span will be improved, your ability to break addictions, better memory. Like, I can remember stuff I wrote in notebooks, like, months ago. My boss is even better. He's been meditating for 11 years. He can tell you what he wrote in the notebook like 7 years ago and go back to a specific notebook where it was. That's little beyond the scope of where I want to be, but it serves him in his role and in his path. But you know what's funny about that is, like, I can't mess up and say I didn't say something, because he's got it all down and he'll remember it, because he's got that, photographic memory like that. Rooting into your own being. That's the key, right? So your root chakra down there in those lower 3 chakras, that's where most of our drama comes from in a lot of ways. Solar plexus, your root chakra down there in your sacral chakra, those lower 3 being rooted by eating, again, root foods, but also, again, rooting your body steadily in your chair, grounded in either lotus position or in your chair upright as you meditate. So I include this slide on the way to do your meditation in the beginning. Again, sitting in a comfortable, quiet location. You can't be with the kids, can't be with the hubby or the wife. you may find a space that's, feels right to you in your home, where you can put a chair or a meditation pillow. You don't necessarily need a meditation pillow, but you can have one. I'd recommend closing your eyes or having another eye covers to have the light sort of go away, because what you want to do is be able to focus inward. You're breathing naturally when you first start. You don't have to chant, it's like the you can start to do that as you get more advanced, but right now you're just breathing naturally and sort of focusing your attention on your breath and counting breaths as they come in. Again, you have to sit up with your body rooted to the ground, your feet planted to the ground, because again, you're a vessel. The top of your head, crown chakra, the energy is coming in. You're focusing your attention on your breath control, and you're just sort of letting your mind wander. And if it does, come back to it, because that person that acknowledges that your mind wandered, that's you, not the thought. So you got it when you catch yourself. It's like going fishing. You can catch your thoughts and just say, oh, thinking, come right back to where you were. Counting your breaths in and out. Beginning meditation. So some resources as we wrap up, and please get your questions ready in the chat, or come off of mute. I'm happy to answer those. Because I think we only have a few more minutes left. And I want to make sure that I'm respectful of everyone's time. But I recommend some guided meditation apps that I've used to help you get started if you want to take the app route. So Buddhify is my favorite. My best friend swears by Headspace. It's not for me, but it's for him. Gaia is another community for those looking for the mudras and the kundalini type practices. They have some charges behind their content. Some of it's free, some of it isn't, but really just world-class. It's like the Netflix for spiritual people. That's what I'll call it. I love it. And you can get tons and tons of resources off of there to do both beginning and advanced meditative practice with a spiritual guide. HoloSync is a little bit different. It's really focusing on, yes, meditation, but they have certain sounds tuned to frequencies. We talked about this in one of our other webinars, but essentially they're sort of tied to your energetic field to help you in different levels of executive function, whether it be willpower or creativity. But HoloSync also has a charge with it. Their app has about 7 or 8 meditations you can do, 30 minutes each. And you will vibe out to somewhere when you do those ones. I recommend them, but they aren't for the faint of heart. Do you use sound instruments when you meditate? Do you mean like singing bowls and that kind of thing? I don't yet. I have to get some because Adrienne Johnson, my soror on the line, said when she has her session, I have to have sound bowls and singing bowls for her. So I don't typically use those. The most things I will use are the apps listed here. But I'm finding my meditation is just much more what's the word for it? It touches my spirit a little bit more when I'm not using anything, when I'm just sitting in the space. Because so much of my life is inputs that I need less inputs and more just nothingness. So just the plain chair that I'm sitting in now, and just the listening to the air purifier go and just being in the space has worked for me. And if there are other questions, do let me know. Some books for you. 7 Laws of Spiritual Success. Amazing, amazing book. It's a quick audible if you have the time. I like to listen to Deepak because he's just so melodic in the way his voice goes. The Surrender Experiment and The Untethered Soul, both those by Michael Singer. They will change your life. Be prepared to have your life changed if you buy them. Life Visioning, another one, Michael Beckwith. He's a big believer in meditation, and he's sort of hardcore about it, like, get her done. Another spiritual teacher that has changed my life completely. The Buddhist monk's name again. So let's go back to the slide so I don't get it wrong. Can you grab that right here? I'm gonna, Doctor, can someone put that in? I can put it in the chat. Let me just type it real quick. Look at modern technology. Dr. Panvanati. Just great stuff online. There's another African-American Zen monk. Angel Kyoto Williams. You may have seen her do a TED Talk, I think, focusing on what matters. And I'll type this in here as well. If you want a quick meditation tonight, where you don't have to overthink it, you can go into YouTube and take a look at this. And again, game changer, game changer. Other questions as we wrap up? I want to tell you about some exciting things coming up, but if you have questions, you can drop them into the chat. So something I'm so excited about. When Erykah Badu and Jill Scott did their concert, one of the things I think it was Jill said was about sharing poetry and how you have to share it and get it out. So one of the biggest growth moments for me, and Adrienne, I have to thank you for this too, because you told me make sure I share my poetry, was actually putting my poetry out there into the world. I had gotten really beat up by a critic, I guess you could say, or another poet, a senior gentleman when I was about 17 or 18, about my work, and it made me so self-conscious about sharing my poetry and actually putting it out in the world. And it's been a big moment of growth for me to be able to do that through What One Knows, but also to actually read my poetry. So I'm going to do a reading on June 3rd, but I want you all to participate too, because I know there are artists and I know there are people with poetry and words they want to get out and put into this world. So I'm giving you a space to do that. If you are a poet, if you know poets, we're going to do this poetry hour where I'm going to pick my favorites and just share those and read those with you all and vibe out. So that's going to be on June 3rd. So please mark your calendars for that. It's right around the corner. Also, we have the 2020 Retrograde Live Reading in IG chat. Some of y'all have been feeling these retrograde downloads with the insomnia and the chills and all the crazy stuff that's going on, because I've been feeling it. And I want to talk about it. I'm going to do a live reading on the 11th to help us understand what's going on astrologically with all this crazy planets spinning and doing their thing. Particularly the Venus and retrograde Gemini, because that one has been, whoo child, put me in a bad way, got me making bad choices in these streets. We got so much going on in June. On the 18th, we have the Dialog session on one of my favorite movies, Daughters of the Dust, and recognition of Juneteenth. We're going to do a sister circle and a discussion around this film and sort of the ancestral themes here and the metaphysical themes of what that looks like. So I look forward to you joining me for this, if you can. And finally, we'll do another one of the 111 series before the summer break. June 24th, we're going to talk about spiritual self-care. It's not just about face masks and all the stuff we like to do to keep ourselves pretty on the outside, but what spiritual self-care looks like on the inside. So that's going to be June 24th. Oh, good question, Chastity. So I'm going to pull some clips from the movie together and try to figure out a way to share those through my IGTV, but the movie is accessible on a couple of streaming channels, and I'll send out more information on that. I might be able to do a session where we can watch it together and then have the talk separate. I was thinking through that, but again, I got to figure out a way to make that feasible. So let me noodle, because the movie is available again on streaming channels. My initial thought was to have everyone watch it and come prepared for the movie talk. But we can figure out what makes sense. And maybe y'all young folks have to help me with the technology on how to do that effectively. We can always do what works for folks that want to participate. But that movie is truly beautiful. It's the inspiration behind Beyonce's Lemonade, for those who don't know. So the last sort of segment of the visuals there, where she's by the water, that's from Daughters of the Dust. It's a Black film director that made that vision come to light. So I look forward to sharing that with you all, for those that didn't see it. Yeah, it's going to be a blast. We're going to have a good time with that one. It's a truly beautiful movie. It touches my heart every time. Every time. So that's all I have for you all this evening. Again, I appreciate your participation. Again, if you have to subscribe to the newsletter, please do so at What One Knows. Please ask your friends, family, those that you think need a little bit of the stuff that I'm offering, to follow me in IG or to subscribe to the newsletter as well. We're just building the community. So, I continue to sow love into the world, and I know it's coming back to me tenfold. So I'm grateful for all the love that's shown and your participation here. If you need anything, consultations, questions, please reach out, DM, email at dprice@whatjuan knows. Anything that's needed, I am here for you all, and I love you all. And be safe. Meditate tonight, and also take your supplements. Okay, loves, have a good evening. I'm going to be around for a few minutes if you're staying around, but the formal session is over. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.